Thank you. I am happy once again to be here. Sorry that I missed the earlier pieces, which I know were very useful. You'll know that whatever I say, right or wrong, is my own and not reliant on anybody else who came before me. And I do think, as I was thinking about what I would say here today, it occurred to me that many of you in the audience may wonder, how is it that I'm going to say anything different than I've said before? And I have to tell you, you're not alone in wondering that. My wife actually asked me, what are you going to say that's different this time? So in the past, I have often spoken about significant energy projects in the region, what made them successful, what we can learn from public and private cooperation and partnerships, and what that means for the importance of the region and for the impact of the region on the world, especially in the energy sector. And all of this remains true. But I didn't want to say that again. So recognizing that I was pretty sure if I didn't want to say it again, you all didn't want to hear me say it again, I've switched up from my 5 key elements, which absolutely you can find, and I think somewhere in a tweet somewhere. But let me do something a little bit differently today. I think it's worth it, given all that has happened in the world, to reflect on the lessons that we have learned, or maybe hope we have learned or should learn from this past year. The last time I was a panelist, on this stage, it was we weren't sure how this year was going to go, what was going to happen. I think we have a better sense now of what that is. So I've come up with 5, it turns out, lessons that I think we should learn from this, and I'd like to share how we in BP, how I think the energy sector writ large, and I think the region can understand and appreciate that. And since there are only 3 of us up here on the stage, I get to talk for a little bit longer than I have in the past, so here we go. 1, nation states and the decisions that they make matter. If you didn't understand that geopolitics and energy were related before Russia's invasion of Ukraine, you do now. And the demise of the importance of the nation state has proven a tad incorrect, if not, or at least early, if not incorrect. Number 2, the world needs energy in order to function, grow, and develop, as Bob noted, and to provide the benefits of that growth to our ever-increasing global population. Number 3, the world will continue to demand, and we need to be able to provide lower carbon ways of providing that energy, because frankly, the fate of our planet depends on that. 4, however, we have to pursue that goal at the same time that we offer the world affordable and secure energy supplies. Again, not surprising to hear Bob say something similar on that, not just because we share a name. And where is Sakuda, by the way, to be clear? Where's the other Bob?
Next time.
And that's okay, I'm just saying.
We have too many Bobs over there.
Trust me. Again, my wife says that too. We have to get to a net zero world. We have to make this transition. But societies have made it clear that we need to do so in a predictable and orderly way that doesn't sacrifice affordability and security of that energy supply. And 5, and I'm going to cheat just a little bit here, government and decisions made by governments at all levels matter. And it matters for how this transition unfolds, how we meet these 3 goals of providing the affordable, secure, and increasingly cleaner energy. So happily for all of you here, I will not go through lengthy treatises to support each of the 5 points individually. I hope you wrote them down the first time. I won't do it again. What I do want to do is talk to you about how we at BP and with our regional partners are working to address the world in which we find ourselves, and how we are trying to show that we understand and have learned the lessons that I've listed the past few years. Russia's invasion of Ukraine thrust energy issues to the forefront of geopolitics. Markets were clearly shaken as the production and supply of hydrocarbons from Russia were in question about how long they would be able to be supplied. What was fascinating to witness is how much nations and societies quickly pivoted to finding in-kind replacements for the fossil fuels that they thought they might lose and then consciously chose to remove from their supplies. This wasn't entirely surprising, but it was a very good reminder for societies that seemed for a while to be only focused on getting to net zero, that these societies did in fact understand that hydrocarbons are still needed for the likely and the near term and likely midterm, and that the transition is not an on-off switch, but more like a dial that has to be turned deliberately. So as I noted, we all understand that we have to get to a net zero world, but we need to do so in this orderly fashion, and one that allows for the affordability and the security of energy as well. I'd say the Caspian region is a perfect example of this trend. The region has always been rich in access to hydrocarbons, the birthplace of oil production, I'm told repeatedly whenever I talk to my friends in Baku, much to the chagrin of my friends in Pennsylvania. So it's an inside energy joke, right? Okay. Sorry, I mean, doesn't work in most audiences, but I would think it would work here, right? Okay. And we in BP, along with our national and commercial partners, play a role in not only providing energy for the region, but also providing energy that comes from the Caspian to other regions, either directly in the crude oil market as a whole, or through Turkey and to Turkey, and then to Western Europe in the gas market. And we've talked about this many times, and I hear that the BTC pipeline came up in terms of the remarks of the ambassador from Turkey. A key development in the modern history of the oil industry and in the region, and the Southern Gas Corridor is another momentous achievement in the gas market. Because natural gas supplies have been such a key geopolitical discussion point for the world in the past year, and because I work at BP, let me spend just a little bit of time on what we've seen from Shah Deniz and the Southern Gas Corridor. After just over 2 years from the launch of the Southern Gas Corridor, the Shah Deniz field has proven to be a significant source of gas for Europe and Turkey, and the corridor and the gas pipeline has successfully linked the South European markets with the main European gas market, increasing the security of supply in the region. To date, Shah Deniz has produced 182 BCM of gas since its inception, which approximates about 23% of its recovery. So that means there's more gas to come from Shah Deniz to support the energy security of the region and Europe. Shah Deniz had a very successful 2022, achieving 25 BCM of total gas produced, of which nearly 21 BCM was exported. In 2022, the operators along the Southern Gas Corridor, including BP, coordinated their efforts to conduct some high-flow trials that proved additional capacity in the system, allowing increasing export to Europe by approximately 1.5 BCM. So while the original long-term contracts were for just over 10 BCM to flow to Western Europe, we have been able to reliably expand those flows to all customers, and we are seeing between 11 and 12 BCM on a daily basis going to Europe now, depending on the market demand. And based on commitments from the market, we are working within the current infrastructure to bring the total capacity close to 14 BCM from the end of 2025. That's real hard numbers of what's going on, what's being produced in the Caspian, and what's going into Western Europe in response to the market, both long-term market mechanisms and the shorter-term market demand. Now, there's been discussion amongst governments, and again, go back to remember, government policy matters, to try to expand the capacity of the Southern Gas Corridor, and we are working with our partners to contribute to that. In order to increase, of course, you've got to look at how do you get significant infrastructure investment and find new resources. So at BP, we're definitely working with the consortium and our partners in Azerbaijan and elsewhere in the region. We've recently had a successful spud of the Shah Deniz exploration well to understand what we have there in terms of new resources to provide. We're going to take advantage of any new discoveries, but let's be clear, any new discoveries at a certain point will only get to outside of the region if there is infrastructure to support those supplies. And honestly, right now it's hard to see how much more than we have currently planned and expanded to beyond that 14 BCM that we can work without major and long-term infrastructure investment. As many of you know, the Southern Gas Corridor was only able to be built based on 25-year purchase agreements from 11 companies across 7 countries. It's hard to see similar infrastructure investments without some kind of similar commitments. But we also, in BP and in the region, know that the long-term to our answer to our energy needs cannot be met only with hydrocarbons. That 2 legs of what we sometimes call the energy trilemma are affordability and security, but that the other leg is how do we find ways to provide energy in an increasingly clean way. And here the region is doing that as well, on their own and with industry. For example, the ones I know, of course, BP and the Ministry of Energy continue close cooperation on Project Sunrise, a solar power plant project in Azerbaijan. Clearly, Azerbaijan, along with other states traditionally seen as hydrocarbon focused, understand that there is a need for balance in energy production and that the world needs to put less carbon into the atmosphere. In another example, we are working to ensure that the carbon produced within the overall hydrocarbon production process for energy nerds like I am, Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions, is reduced. So specifically, we're working at the Sankoshel terminal electrification and decarbonization products, which we're looking at how can we take solar energy from Project Sunrise in Jibril and use some of that to electrify and decarbonize the production of hydrocarbons at the terminal. So, as I sit here today, it seems very clear to me that the Caspian region has already learned, and in many cases, frankly, already knew, many of the lessons that I think the world should take from the past year. Let's be clear, few in this complex political region fail to understand the importance of geopolitics, the importance of nations and relations amongst them. This region has been key to providing the energy the world needs for centuries and has seen development come locally and globally because of that energy. Further, this region, even as dependent on hydrocarbons as it has been, is directly involved in the decarbonization of its fossil fuel production and on adding clean energy supplies to the grid. The Caspian has been at the forefront of Europe's desire for secure, stable, and affordable energy for years through the commitment of multiple governments and companies to providing supplies from the Caspian through multiple pipelines. And none of this would have been possible without clear and sustained government policies, support, and cooperation, and with close cooperation between governments and the private sector. And I'd be remiss if I didn't take this time to point out the great cooperation that we have with all of our partners in the region, many of the governments represented here and who were here before, most obviously the government of Azerbaijan, and with our commercial partners in the region, again, Scher, who is often on this stage alongside of me, I'd be remiss without calling them out as well. What I guess in the end I hope is that other regions of the world learn and remember these same lessons that I wrote out at the beginning, as well as the Caspian region has. Thank you.